Hi, this is Jason Lisk with PoolGenius, and I have a special guest with us today as we look forward to the 2026 PGA season that is about to start with the Sony Open. And for us, one and done pools, but all sorts of pools. You know, you may be in DFS stuff, you may be in one and done. We're going to cover it here. We're going to talk about golfers. I'm here with Rick Gehman of RickRunGood. If you are a golf fanatic, you probably know Rick. But if you're not, you can find them at rickrungood.com. Where else can they find you this season? Where are you going to be putting out content?
Yeah, gonna be so the Rick Run Good YouTube channel is where I'll do a lot of my stuff. You mentioned my website, rickrungood.com, giant database and modeling and things of that nature. I'll be doing, I think, 12 different bet feeds for PGA Tour Live this year. So that's down in Ponte Vedra and all day long, kind of gaming related streams there. So that'll be a lot of fun. But yeah, this is you said it almost kind of jarred me a little bit. 2026, like Sony Open is like, I'm so stoked. We don't get much of an off season in golf, but it felt longer this year, so I'm ready to go.
Yeah, so I know you've traveled to a lot of events. We're going to talk about like where golfers may play and stuff, but where are you traveling to? Do you know your schedule yet? Like,
Oh my gosh,
where are people going to see you?
I'm usually a last minute traveler, so it
Okay.
usually comes together very late. But I usually get off to a hot start. You know, I'm on the West Coast, so like Phoenix and Riviera and Torrey Pines are almost all certainties. And then as we get to major championship season, it's usually the majors outside of the Open. We've got a President's Cup in the United States this year, and then I imagine there will be weeks that I'm not in the studio in Florida. Maybe I'll go to a Florida swing event or something like that. So yeah, it usually comes together pretty late for me though, Jason.
Well, you get to however it comes together, you get to go to a lot of things.
It's awesome.
Do a lot of fun stuff. Quite the life you have. I'm jealous. But let's talk about 26. Some quick overview storylines that you're interested in. Maybe a couple that you're going to keep an eye on before we get into some specifics.
Yeah, like there's a lot. I think one is that Scotty Scheffler might not be done getting better. I think that's scary. I think it's crazy. Yes, he's just put together the two best non-Tiger seasons since the Tiger era started in 1997, but there's still a lot of room for improvement in his game. He still misses a lot of short putts. There's still places that he can get better, which I think is really scary for everybody else. And that's, for what we're going to talk about coming up, how do you deploy him in some of these one and dones, I think is interesting. But just Scotty in general is very much, Jason, in the midst of something historic. I want to appreciate that as a fan of the game, but I also want to see like how far he can push this as a data guy.
Yeah, he really has been. I mean, I was looking through his stuff, right? His results, kind of doing the gap between him and everybody else is so big. And not only that, like there's only a handful of events you might say in the past he hasn't done well. Like he literally does well everywhere. Like he hasn't won the U.S. Open, but you know what? He's been a very good golfer at the U.S. Open. It's not like he stinks there. He's going to get that major at some point. We can talk about whether it's this year.
This year.
But he dominates the Memorial. He dominates. He does well at TPC. He does well almost everywhere.
And the way the schedule is going, again, this kind of foreshadowing what we're going to talk about with how important the big events are. The schedule is kind of in this in-between phase where you have these types like it's getting better for Scotty. I mean, he's getting more smaller field, 4 guaranteed rounds. Like if you give him 4 guaranteed rounds, he's going to beat you a lot of the time. So it's just kind of this perfect storm of he's a phenomenal golfer. The schedule sets up really well for him. There's really no flaw where you would say, oh, that's not a good course for him. So there's just a lot of stuff, obviously, to love about Scotty.
Well, we're going to talk one and done, and we're going to talk more Scotty and other golfers. I do want to say at PoolGenius, we have a golf one and done product. So if you are in golf one and done pools, we've worked with Rick in the past, and we have a product where you can set up as many entries as you want. You can track your picks. You can see data, golfer ratings, betting odds, past course history, future planners, like on the upcoming events and which are the biggest money. So anyway, if you're interested in one, check us out at PoolGenius.com. And also, Rick, we're going to talk about a contest that you have your name on, and I played in last year, and I just signed up another for this year. and there's some exciting changes. So talk about your one and done contest at Splash.
Yeah, well, before I do that, I mean, what you guys have at PoolGenius is great. Was lucky enough to kind of consult on that a little bit a couple of years ago, and it is what I use, right, to manage all the entries. And the way that One and Done is growing kind of leads into what my contest looks like for this year. I mean, last year I hosted my One and Done, which I've hosted every year for the last 6 or 7 years. I've been doing it on Splash Sports the last couple of years, and we had $500,000 in a guaranteed purse, and now it's 1.25 million, which is outrageous. A point that I never thought we would even get to, in the way that we've gotten to it so quick. So there's this, there's really just this idea that like, I think One and Done is so perfect for golf, because you've got all these events, you've got, it can be as basic or as complex as you want it to be. It's just a really, really good format. It's basically NFL Survivor, but you're not knocked out in week 2 or 3. Like, you get to play all year long. So there's a lot of really good things for it. And Splash has been really great for me. They let me basically handpick the payout structure. So I went through and handpicked the payout structure. I made sure we had segment winners available and all that fun stuff. So yeah, it's just been something that's grown way more than expectation over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I played it last year. It seems like there's some slight tweaks, but you did have the segments last year. We got them back. It looks like there's a few more payout spots for the segments. Am I right in that for this year?
Yeah, few more payout spots. There is a lower number of max entries, which is some of the feedback that we heard from last year. I wanted to also ensure, when you go through this with, a company like Splash, I mean, they're putting up they're guaranteeing it. It's not coming out of my pocket, right? So there's some give and take here. There's some compromise, and you have to get this, you want to get this really great top prize, which is what we have, which is $100,000. You want to have that as a big carrot, a nice marketing piece. But I also wanted to make sure that we were getting kind of like those flatter payout structures, not where we go from $100,000 to first and $8,000 for second or something like that. I didn't want that. So there's a really strong top prize with a flatter structure. The segments in some cases are only 4 tournaments long. So if you're not having a great year, get hot for 3 or 4 tournaments, like you can win $7,500, right? Like, there's like a lot of good ways to keep people engaged all year long.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, that was the case with a couple of my entries last year. Is I had a lot of good golfers, but I saved them up until I started to do well in segment. I didn't hit it, but I came close toward the end of the year because I had a lot of the good golfers saved up. And so, yeah, the segment prizes to me are great. The payout structure you described, because here's the thing. I could be in the pool. You can be in the pool. People that listen to me can be in the pool. We can pick different golfers over the course of a week. We can have an opinion. I played 15 entries last year, and I had maybe 5, 6 golfers in play each week. Well, in a particular pool, we may be on something different. You can compete against me, and we can both still win a prize, because I think it's just inside top 10%. So even though you talked about, you still have to do well, but it's not impossible. You're in a pool of several thousand.
Yeah,
but you can finish in the money if you do well.
Yeah, and the way these signature events are, the way these major championships are, you don't have to have a great year, but if you are right, like at the right time, once or twice a year, like, it really, really helps and can kind of push you towards whatever those cash lines are. So yeah, it's exciting. It's a lot of fun. I mean, I can't even imagine what this looks like in 5 years. I'll try to stay here in 2026, but I'm stoked about it.
Yeah, in fact, I looked at last year's winner, which was not me, by the way.
It was not me either.
and I looked at that entry, and there was a couple things. To win a pool this large, that person ran hot.
Yes,
obviously, they got Scotty and Rory right. There were multiple events you could have done that, but you had to probably get one of those. They hit Justin Thomas at the RBC. They hit Keegan at the Travelers, and I think they had Sepp Straka at the Truist. So they hit 5 big events. But here's the thing. None of those events were before the Masters. That entry was below average. That entry was way down until like the Masters hit. So 2 months into the season. And that's the great thing about One and Done. All it takes is a big hit. You may be in the money if you hit 1 or 2 big tournament winners that a lot of other people didn't have.
Yeah, and think about, I mean, just the final, I'm doing this off the top of my head, like final 6 or 7 weeks of the year I think they have a signature event. You've got the Open Championship. You're going to have 2 playoff events. Like, the back end of the schedule is loaded with cash. So yeah, you're right. If you're you could be well below average, find a couple of winners late, and all of a sudden you're getting a pretty nice return.
Yeah. So check it out. Golf One and Done pool. That splash contest is a fun one to be in. $250 entry fee, correct? And then
Yep.
and what's the entry limit on that contest this year? You
Got
said
it down to 25, I believe, is the max.
still a pretty healthy number.
Oh yeah,
Um,
if you want to run a bunch of lineups, you're still able to do
yeah.
that. It's just it's not going to allow for like 100 entries or something like that.
Yeah, so come check us out. You pick one golfer each week. You can only use them once. That's why it's like Survivor, but it's also like picking upsets. Every golfer, maybe other than Scotty, you're trying to nail a long shot. Even the good ones. What, 5% chance, 4% chance in most weeks. So yeah, it's a great long shot game. Stick with it. It's fun to play. So let's get in to talking about some of the strategies and other things about this pool, OAD pools in general, and a 2026 preview. So how do you decide where you want to use golfers? And can you talk about which events look important for 2026 and how you see it playing out?
Yeah, so I start with what I deem are the most important events. So they are in general the high dollar events. Now there's a lot of them this year, right? You've got the signature events, you've got the major championships. So you're probably looking at 12 or so different events that are really like the most important. And then within those, you've got to figure out which are more predictable than others. So I kind of rank them like that, Jason. You know, if you look at the Open Championship and you're like, oh, the Open Championship, well, that's a big purse. Like, well, yeah, and you also might get horrible weather. You've got like 150 golfers in that field. Half of it might be wiped out by some weather wave. Like, that's a pretty unpredictable event. Like, I know Scotty Scheffler won it last year, but like, is the favorite always going to win it? I don't know. That's not a super sticky place. But you look at something like RBC Heritage or Harbor Town, which Harbor Town's a very sticky golf course. It's going to have 70 some odd players in it. There's not going to be a cut. That's a little bit easier to predict. So that's what I do is I basically look at these events, rate them by the purse, how good I think I am at predicting the outcome of them, and then start picking my golfers in that way and then work my way down. But I mean, that might not be the best way to do it. That's just the way. How do you do it?
Yeah, similar. I mean, I look at the money first of all, and then I go down from there. Like the players, 4.5 million. I assume that's staying the same this year. I don't know if they've released the final number, but that's been where it's at the last couple. Then the U.S. Open and Masters went up. They actually crossed the 4 million mark last year, went ahead of the Memorial, Arnold Palmer, and Genesis. But I would put those six as like the keys because unlike the no cut events, you actually have to make a cut in those. So there's a little more differentiation, and the first prize is worth more. So I'd say those are the top six for me. But then having a player at low ownership at like one of the playoff events could be huge for 3.6 million. The Truest can be a tough test. That's for 3.6. By the way, we got a new one this year. I don't know if people know this. I think it's a Doral. What's the official name for it now?
Just got a sponsor, so it is now the Cadillac Championship.
Okay, and so that's a course that. When was the last time they played an event at that course?
Oh, it's probably been 10 years.
So a lot of these golfers haven't played it in an official event.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on like how to treat that one versus some of the others we have more history on?
Yeah, so it's interesting because you're right. There are going to be places that we go like Muirfield Village for the Memorial we have a ton of history. There's a lot of good course horses. There's guys who have played there every single year. That tends to be one of the stickier places. It would probably be unlikely for me to use someone like a Scotty Scheffler at Doral just because there's so many unknowns and he is such a valuable commodity that I worry about that. The thing that I think is worth a larger discussion, Jason, is just like the way. So we've got this issue where the major championships have some of the highest purses, and then you've got the live golfers who are coming over and playing in those events. And it created a situation where I think the pendulum has swung a little bit too far at major championships. I mean, the ownership of major championships was dominated by live golfers. I mean, you're talking about Bryson DeChambeau being 30% owned at like the US Open and the PGA Championship, and John Rahm being by far the most owned at the Open Championship. Scotty Scheffler in majors last year was 9% at the Masters, 5%, 5%, and 1% at the majors. It's like, okay, I get it. And I want to pick your brain about this. Like, I understand that there is a value of Jon Rahm, top 5 player in the world that you only get access to in 4 events a year. But at the same time, if he's 30% owned and Scotty Scheffler is 9% owned, like where do I make that decision?
It is tough. This is, and I am by no means perfect with my thought process here, but I'll tell you, it's tough because it's super high leverage, right? When Bryson won the U.S. Open 2 years ago, I think he was like 40% owned, 35, maybe somewhere in there. He was one of the highest owned all year. If you didn't pick him, unfortunately, you were probably in trouble in a one and done pool because nearly half your pool got like maximum points there. So it's one of those things where you got to like debate, like, do I eat the chalk? And I think it may depend on, like, if I'm leading a pool, I probably want to cover with one of the live golfers by the U.S. Open. Like if I'm out in front and on the leaderboard, but it also presents an opportunity if you're trailing that you can get actually some really good golfers at low ownership and fade them and just hope they don't hit. You're hoping Rahm and DeChambeau don't beat your golfer.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because honestly, one of my favorite parts about like the PoolGenius tool that you guys have is, first off, making a plan like puts you ahead of most people in general. So like, just go make a plan. But the idea of playing your position and knowing if I need to make up ground, because you're right, I don't have to decide on who I'm using at the Open in January or February, right?
Yeah, you won't run out of golfers. There will be a golfer that you can pick.
Yeah, and there's probably going to be a Ben Griffin that pops up, or AJ Spawn, right? Or like somebody who maybe not on your radar January 1st, but by the time you start getting into the meat of the schedule, like they're a lot more in play. So I like that, is if you're in the top 10% or you're front running or you're whatever it is, and Jon Rahm's going to be 35% owned at the Open, like, yeah, no problem. But then you can get basically any other star in the world for sub 9%. If you're trying to make up ground. So yeah, I guess that is a really good way to differentiate how that decision's being made.
Yeah, like last year, Bryson at the PGA showed up on a lot of the top cashing entries simply because Scotty won in a lot of places, and getting a guy who finished second in the tournament Scotty won did you good. And so it's not as simple as you always want to fade the chalk. It's probably like, how good is the chalk, and then how much am I willing to go against it and kind of push my chips in at this event.
Yeah, it's really fascinating, which is again part of like the one and done is so simple. Pick one golfer every week and get the money for him. But then the complexities and the branches that you can go down are so fun.
Yeah, I honestly, when I play like 15 entries, if the chalk is probably one of the top 5 guys on the odds board, I'm probably covering them in some way on at least some of those entries. Yeah. I'm willing to draft with the crowd on some of them and go against them with my others. Now, if the chalk is like a non-signature event where a guy who's 10th is being jacked up because he finished second there the year before, I'm probably full fading in that case. That's probably how I think about it.
Yeah, and that's a good way. I love the diversification too. If you do have multiple entries, you can go down a couple of different routes, or we haven't even gotten into. You should hear. I'm sure you hear it all the time. I mean, the amount of different versions of these contests that people play in,
yes.
Like if you pick a winner, you get to use them again. So some people have used Scotty 3 or 4 times in a year. Like, there are so many variations. I know the one that we play, the one that we have on Splash is like, that's the absolute standard, but yeah, it creates a lot of fun situations.
Yeah. I would love to try that one. That would be entertaining.
That's a fun.
I thought we should do that in NFL Survivor too. If you use an underdog and you get it right, you go. Revive a team or something, kind of like chess or checkers. But yeah, so let's continue down here. Talking about golfers, 2026. We had a fair amount of disappointments last year. Some of the big names. Xander got hurt early. Colin Morikawa, I mean, really rough from like early spring, mid-spring on. Did not look in good form by the time the Ryder Cup came around. People were questioning whether he should have been on that team. Ludwig had the big win early, but a kind of inconsistent like season. Did well at the Masters, but had a lot of events where he didn't do well at the big events. Some of those names, and then the surprises, big surprises last year. JJ Spawn, I mean, winning the U.S. Open, competing at the Players, coming in second at the St. Jude, just out of nowhere, mid-30s. And then Ben Griffin emerged over the summer and came on really strong. He's actually in our top 5 in golfer ratings entering this year on just raw results. on his last 150 rounds, which is weighted toward recent. So I want your thoughts on some of these surprises and disappointments and who you see rebounding or who you see maintaining.
Yeah, maybe a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, I would have said, hey, here's 10 guys in the world, and you could almost interchange them in any order, and I wouldn't beat you up too much about it. Now I think it's very clearly Scotty is by far the best player in the world. I think Rory is very safely the second best player in the world. I think Tommy Fleetwood is probably the third best player in the world. And then I think it's absolute chaos after that, right? And you could like argue this in a lot of different ways. And I'm a little bit more optimistic on Colin Morikawa's 2026 than I was about his 2025. He's still an elite iron player. His big issue is, of course, the putter, which is no different than it has been the entirety of his career. He probably ran into a little bit more wind luck than he deserved in his first 50 starts of his career, and that's kind of faded off. But there's a lot of good stuff that keeps him close to his DNA. And then for our purposes, like one and done wise, he has a couple of spots where he just has elite course history, right? I mean, if you play him at Muirfield Village, you'd probably be pretty happy about that. If you played him at Harbor Town or places where maybe accuracy reigns supreme, like that would probably be pretty good. So I think he's excited from a one and done perspective. And then I also think like one of the notes that I made is around Hideki, who just finds a way to win once or twice a year, seemingly out of nowhere. He is always almost incredibly overlooked because people are worried about some WD or some injury or just like him getting off to a bad start and kind of just kicking the can down the road. But he has a lot of really great course history as well. Muirfield Village, Scottsdale, obviously at Augusta National. It's a lot of, a lot of different places that you could play him. And he has that upside right now. His floor, and I want to get your thoughts about this, like trying to measure or try to balance a guy's ceiling, which is literally becoming a Masters champion, or his floor, which is like hitting 3 shots and going home. Like it's a little bit scary, but that's kind of a leverage spot that you can get excited about.
Yeah, but you win one and done pools by hitting winners. I mean, you don't win one and done pools by getting a 20th place instead of making a cut instead of just being a cut. So obviously those little things could help. And I could say that and somebody say, oh, I was $2,000 less because my golfers missed the cut. But, for the most part, you're going to be on the leaderboard if you hit winners. So you want guys that can put that week together. I
guess that's a good point.
Super huge leverage. Last year, it only paid off for you if you played them right away at the Century. Right. Other than that, it was a pretty rough year if you were picking Hideki later in the year. But then he brought you back in December here.
He gave you something to be excited about going into the new year.
Right.
You're right about the sense of like the difference between a guy who finishes dead last and 23rd is not that big of a difference. But the difference between a guy who finishes 23rd and 3rd or 23rd and is like massive, especially because with the way the payout structures are.
Especially if it's an event where you get the third and say nobody picked one or Scotty won, because then you're going to have other cracks with Scotty. So yeah, you want to hit those high finishes.
And then you start rooting for, okay, Scotty's been used by everybody. Now I hope he wins everything because now all I know the points aren't going anywhere else.
Yeah. So you have a lot of tools on your site. You talked about your stat site. I love playing around with some of about the courses and what types of things are good there. Like what types of certain courses play to drive people that can drive the ball, approach shots, different shot shapes. What are some of the course things we should pay attention to, past history? Where can it be overvalued, and where should we pay more attention to course kind of setup?
Yeah, I love this. And this is like, this could be a 10-hour seminar where I just listen to people talk about the way that course is set up for players and vice versa. But for our purposes in general, early in the season is very scary in terms of stickiness. So you get a lot of things. January 1st is when a lot of guys sign new club deals or they start using new clubs. That's a real thing. You see it all the time. They're trying out new things. They don't know if they're going to put it in the bag full time. You might see some blips on the radar there. You get course rotations, right? You're getting a handful of course rotations early in the year where some guys are just on the good side of the draw and on the bad side of the draw. You get places with a lot of water. Like I think about the Florida swing where there's water everywhere. and the one bad shot, one below average shot now turns into like 2 strokes as opposed to just like a slightly below average shot. So early in the year, there are not a lot of places that I love stickiness wise. And then as the year goes on, you start to see guys get into form. You start to see courses that separate themselves statistically. I keep mentioning Harbor Town because Harbor Town's a very short golf course. It's tree lined. It looks different than a lot of other courses on the PGA Tour schedule. It's about precision more than it is about power. And that's when you really start to say, okay, this is a course like Justin Thomas at Muirfield Village, or excuse me, at Harbor Town. Him spraying it off the tee is his weakness. Well, now his deficiency is covered a little bit because he can just put it in play, and then he can lean into some of his super strengths, which is hitting approach shots and having a really good short game on these tiny little greens. So it's kind of stuff like that where I'm weighing not only is this a good fit, but how sticky is this? How predictable is this outcome? And then trying to find guys that fit into it. And then you see so many great great course horses at like TPC River Highlands and Muirfield Village, guys that basically could roll out of bed and finish inside the top 10 because it's such a good fit for them.
I will have to say I've been over the last several days digging into our data. It is really hard to find consistent evidence that course history matters. And I say that knowing that it probably does. Like certain players fit certain, like the length of the course, how it plays. But there's so much noise. So if you're just looking at like how a dude finished the year before, there's probably just as much noise. He could have gotten lucky that year. And so you're like, it's just so noisy that I think like that's why some of your tools are great. They go beyond score and into, I think, traits a little more, right?
Yeah, I try to build the type of golfer who's going to have success or who has had success on that course and then go find those golfers. But you're right. And I agree with you from a data side of things. Like if I stuck Scotty Scheffler on a golf course that he has never seen before right now, he's going to shoot like a 67. It's going to be fine, right? Like it's not a big deal. But when you talk to these players, some of these guys, when they get there and they show up and a place fits their eye or something, there's definitely part of it that I cannot compute. But I do love the idea that if I would have told you, Jason, before the year started, like if I would have said to you, Scotty's going to win 2 major championships, Rory McIlroy's going to win a major, so that's 3 of the 4. Tell me who won where. You probably would have gotten them all wrong.
You would have said Rory at PGA because he was playing.
Dale Hollow was fantastic. Yep. You probably would have said Scotty winning the Masters because he's already done that. Or you would have said Rory at the Open because it's back at it's a home game for him. Like you would have said Scotty at the US. It's just like you probably would have gotten that wrong, and I would have given you 3 of the 4 correct answers. You know what I mean? So I agree with you that it doesn't matter as much as a lot of people, I think, would like you to believe that it matters.
So it probably does matter in certain cases, but you can get to the wrong answer a lot of times by relying on it. And I think popularity definitely, like you'll see golfers who had consecutive top 10s in an event, and they'll just be more popular than maybe they should be.
Yeah, do you think it's probably one of the bigger drivers of ownership is course history, right?
For sure. I think so. I mean, obviously the actual odds are probably the biggest driver. It's going to somewhat mirror the odds board, especially the biggest events, but I do think course history is a close second. Yeah. And will boost the guys up who are in the second tier to be more popular.
Yeah, especially in like the non-signature events where you're at Colonial or whatever, and it's like, oh, Ben Griffin's got back-to-back top 10s here, or so-and-so's got back-to-back top 10s. I would imagine that drives it quite a bit.
So, but we talked about like how you profile some of these golfers. Who are some for 26 that you think are course type dependent or have a certain type of game where maybe you're like, I don't want to use them at these kind of courses, but I want to use them here?
Yeah, as far as stars go, guys that are probably in the top 12 of the world, I throw caution to the wind with Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, put him anywhere, it doesn't matter. Patrick Cantlay, Colin Morikawa, I'm very cautious, right? You will only see me run those guys out on courses that they've had a lot of success at or courses that I think are going to fit them. Both have played well at Muirfield Village, but you could also run Patrick Cantlay out at Harbor Town. He's had a great record there. And then you start going into like skill sets a little bit. And I always love the Cam Davis at Detroit, like that type of player where it's just you could hit it anywhere you want off the tee and go find it. They have done a little bit of work this year, but like that type of player, you mentioned it earlier, Jason. I start lumping these guys together. Like Cam Davis, Chris Gotterup, Wyndham Clark, same-ish type player. They're going to hit it long. They're going to be a little bit inaccurate. They're going to have a lot of raw power. They're going to have to play well out of the rough. Things like that. I tend to start grouping guys together and then finding the courses that I think they're going to fit well on and kind of dispersing them from there.
One guy, by the way, that Russell Henley last year, he won the Arnold Palmer.
Yes.
But he was very he had a very, he's getting up there, and he's not a young guy, and we saw at the Ryder Cup, a long course, he was pretty ineffective. He was also fairly ineffective at the signature events that were the longest of the courses, and he did better at like the shorter courses, like we've seen. I think did he finish second at the Travelers, which is one of the shorter ones,
or the shortest courses on the schedule.
And I think he did okay at RBC.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's the kind of guy but that's a simpler thing. Is I just don't think he can hit it far anymore. So there's probably certain courses that are out of his range.
Yeah, and courses like that. I mean, you think about Bay Hill. Bay Hill probably skews longer, but at the same time, the reward for playing out of the fairway is bigger there. So even if he is giving up 20 yards to his peers, he doesn't have to come out of 4-inch thick rough all the time into these firm greens. So yeah, he is being rewarded for his skill sets at those places in a big way.
Well, closing golfer takes. So we're you've given me so much of your time. It's been great. Again, check Rick out. Check out his YouTube channel. But let's go into these closing takes. If Scotty's not the golfer of the year, because I think we both agree there's a pretty big gap right now. Mm-hmm. Who's the guy that takes that crown by winning the big events, by kind of like being that golfer this year?
I think the smart money is to say Rory, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to create a little bit of better conversation here, which I think there's a big pathway for Tommy Fleetwood. There's a couple of things I said earlier. I think he's pretty firmly the third best player in the world. His strokes gain numbers for 2025 were fantastic. I also love that he is so well-rounded. He just rarely plays himself out of it. He has this really great high floor. And I'm not a big believer in, he won, he broke through, and now he's going to win everything. Because he's won like 7 times on the World Tour. Like he's won plenty of trophies. But if he does take the win from the Tour Championship, if he takes the win from India a couple weeks after that, and he just uses that to whatever, take the next, however you want to describe it in golf, the world is his oyster. I mean, there are so many good spots for him. He's contended at so many major championships in his career. I think there's a fairly strong case to be made. Tommy Fleetwood contends, maybe wins a major, contends a lot this year. It's going to take things falling his way. Like JJ Spawn's, 2 swings away from being having 3 massive wins last year instead of a win in 2 playoff seconds. Like things would have to fall his way, but I think Tommy Fleetwood is a very strong case to be the second best player in the world in 2026.
Yeah, I know that you said, the fact that he's won elsewhere. However, do you think he was in contention, but he did have several Sunday kind of fall apart? So do you think the fact that he got it done at Tour takes a little bit of that out of his head when he's in those positions?
I hope so, because there was I was in Memphis when he basically melted down on Sunday, and you could see it in his face, Jason. I mean, his shoulders were getting higher and higher the deeper into the back nine you could see the tension. So I do wonder if how he's going to continue to feel when he gets back in the mix. I'm hoping that he does. I'm hoping that it's a positive. I'm not counting on it, but I'm hoping it is.
Okay, so we talked about potential player of the year. Who could be there with Scotty? Which golfer outside the top 50, which, by the way, for people who know how the tour's set up, top 50 from last year who played the BMW get into all the signature events. So they're going to be at your biggest events automatically this year if they choose to play. Which golfer that did not qualify for the signature events do you think turns in the best year and is in the discussion that we're talking about, kind of like Ben Griffin last year and some of those guys? by
Yeah,
mid-season.
so I'm kind of looking for a bounce back. The Ben Griffin stuff is so amazing because it really came out of nowhere. I mean, the guy was basically retired as a professional golfer. Um, I'm going a little bit safer with Sahith Theegala here because his bad 2025, I would chalk up almost entirely to injury. You know, he hurt himself playing on TGL. He tried to play through it. It got way worse. It was ugly. It was not good at all. He finally shut it down at the end of the year, got healthy and started to play a little bit in the fall. But if you just eliminate 2025 and say, okay, bad year, injury, let's get back to it. His last 5 years prior to that have been fantastic. He's improving in all the areas you would want him to see. He's got a lot of different shots, both from tee to green. He's got this fantastic short game. He's shown that he can kind of play himself into contention often. I just love the way that he's set up. And 2025 was such a disaster, not really, in my opinion, because of anything golf related, more so than just injury related. And I'm happy to forgive and forget that year for him, as I'm
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, it was a rough year. Like he started off as he was probably top 30, right? Top 25, 30 entering the year. And did he finish outside the top 125 in the points by the
I
end of the
thought he was
season?
150th when I was looking. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it was
so he can still get into the events, but he's right on the edge of like just being able to get in the field, right? Like
yeah. Well,
he's
and
gonna
he's
give
got he won an event in 23, so I guess he's got some status
he's
from
got
that. It's
them.
yeah, I mean, it was just a completely lost year for him. And again, I'm crediting a lot of that to the injury. I hope it's all injury related and not anything else.
Yeah, I mean, you would think because he's still at a prime age. He can and he works hard. He's going to play a lot of stuff. So,
It's gonna play a
okay, there you have it, folks. Sahith to bounce back. Well, that concludes what I wanted to talk about here with Rick today. We've covered the golf season, but reminder, we have the Rick Run Good. What's the official name of this pool when they go to Splash?
very long, but it's Rick Run Good and Splash $1.25 million one and done world championship. We jammed everything we could into that title, but if you go to splashsports.com, it's on the main page. It's the first thing. My face is on there, all that fun stuff.
So jump in and play against both of us. We'll both be in that pool. Lots of people will be in it. Top 500 and something will cash at the end of the year. Lots of segment prizes. If you are behind, even as we get to the summer, keep making those picks. But jump into that pool. It's going to be a fun one. It was one of my favorite things to do last year is to play that and all the other one and dones I did. Really fun. Good way to keep in touch with my son. We talk about our picks on Wednesday nights. We get them in. And so, yeah, check that out. And then check out our product. Our product, the Golf One and Done product, actually opens on Friday. I believe the date is the 9th. The Friday before this open, we'll find out the actual Sony Open field sometime late Friday. Later that night, we'll have the field in our stuff. So you can get a free trial. You can check it out. You can see what it involves and check out our one and done product. Really helps keep you organized, presents data. We like to let you make the choice, but give you information for these pools because there's so many golfers. So I'm not going to argue on one not being reasonable over another, but there's lots of great tools there. So check that out. And then check Rick out. Watch for his content all year. See what tournaments he decides to show up at and where he's going to appear in 2026. Any final thoughts, Rick?
No, you guys are great. I love chatting with you about not only this, but March Madness and Survivor and stuff like that. So yeah, big fan of you guys and PoolGenius in general. And yeah, 26 is going to be a splendid golf year. I'm so excited for it. Thank you for having me.
Yep. Excellent. Thank you so much. And good luck to everyone in this 2026 golf season.